Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're opening a sealed dossier. I want you to imagine an ancient, iron-locked vault, buried under centuries of dust, raw ambition, and, well, blood. Every so often, that heavy iron lock gives way, and what crawls out from the darkness, it isn't just a story, it's a warning. In this explainer, we're looking at a historical record that Rome literally spent 2,000 years trying to keep firmly shut. The true story of Cleopatra VII, Cleopatra.
Time is not a river. It is a vault. That perfectly captures what we're up against today. History handed her to us draped in silk and scandal, kind of reduced to a mere seductress in the stories written by men. But the reality? She was the last pharaoh of a massive dynasty that had ruled Egypt for nearly 300 years. Her name wasn't a whisper in the ancient world, it was an absolute tremor. Rome spent its entire existence burying her real history, and today, we're finally unearthing it.
Here's the path of our investigation today. We have to examine these facts in sequence to uncover the greatest cover-up in ancient history. 1. The real Queen Cleopatra. 2. Why Rome sweated. 3. The master negotiator. 4. The Roman cover-up. And finally, the final defiance. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. The real Queen Cleopatra. Tearing down the marble busts. We are stripping away the silk, the scandal, and all that propaganda commissioned by her enemies, because when you look at her actual terrifying qualifications, it's mind-blowing. She spoke 9 languages fluently, including Egyptian, Greek, and Latin. Actually, she was the absolute first Ptolemaic ruler in 3 whole centuries to even bother learning the language of her own people. Think about that. She studied high-level mathematics and astronomy. She mastered economics and complex trade routes. She deeply understood naval warfare and military strategy. This wasn't a woman who just sat on a throne and waited for the world to bow. No, she was a woman who built kneeling into the very architecture of every single room she entered.
Section 2. Why Rome sweated. The geopolitical threat. Okay, let's dive into this. Because to understand why Rome feared her, you first have to understand what Rome was terrified of about itself during that decaying 1st century BC. Just look at this stark, terrifying contrast. On one side, the Roman Republic is completely fracturing. Civil wars, political assassinations, generals turning their own armies against the Senate. Their institutions were just rusting from the inside out. But on the other side, Egypt. Ancient, immovable, intoxicating power. Egypt was literally the breadbasket of the ancient world. Whoever controlled the Nile controlled the grain supply for half the Mediterranean. The sheer amount of wealth flowing out of Alexandria made Roman fortunes look like absolute pocket change. And make no mistake, Cleopatra was Egypt.
Section 3. The master negotiator. Weaponizing time.
Picture this sequence of events. It's 48 BC. A 21-year-old Cleopatra is politically outmaneuvered, exiled, and surrounded by enemies. Most people would just accept defeat, right? Well, not her. Step 1. She actually smuggles herself inside the palace walls right under her enemies' noses, rolled up in a carpet or a linen sack. Step 2. Delivered directly to Julius Caesar, the most powerful man in the Roman world, she doesn't beg, she negotiates. And step 3, within just mere days, she dangerously and completely allies herself with the victor of 100 battles. She infiltrated the palace and turned a conqueror into a true partner.
And believe me, Rome noticed. Caesar brought her back to Rome, and that right there is the exact moment the fear really crystallized. You see, she didn't arrive shackled in some triumphal parade, which was exactly how Rome preferred its foreign royalty. No way. She arrived as his absolute equal, installed right in his villa, openly receiving senators, and she arrived visibly carrying Caesar's child. Caesarion, Little Caesar. She was literally blending the invincible bloodlines of Rome's greatest general with the last living heir of Alexander the Great's empire.
Naturally, Rome panicked. They branded her an Eastern temptress, a sorceress. The famous orator Cicero, he wrote about her with this absolute, barely concealed venom, whispering that she wanted to be Queen of Rome. And then came March 15, 44 BC, 23 stab wounds on the floor of the Senate. Caesar was dead. And just like that, the most dangerous queen in the world was suddenly alone again.
Lesser rulers would have collapsed entirely right then and there. But let's follow her timeline here. She immediately returns to Egypt, consolidates her power, and she just waits. When the Roman world tore itself apart and Mark Antony emerged as the powerhouse in the East, he summoned her to Tarsus as a command. But she arrived on a massive golden barge, meticulously calculated to appear as the goddess Aphrodite herself, her perfume drifting across the harbor before her ship was even visible. She made Rome's second most powerful man come to her. Together, they built a massive power base operating entirely outside Rome's rigid framework.
Section 4. The Roman Cover-Up. Rewriting History. Meanwhile, back in the West, Octavian emerged. He looked east and immediately recognized that their divine alliance, with Antony styling himself as Dionysus and Cleopatra as Isis, was not just some grand romance. It was about who would ultimately own the ancient world. Octavian was cunning in a way military men rarely are. So he didn't just fight Cleopatra on the battlefield, he completely rewrote her in the public eye. He flooded Rome with pamphlets, poems, speeches, essentially launching the most sophisticated character assassination in ancient history. Why? Because he couldn't say the truth out loud. She wasn't dangerous because she was seductive. She was dangerous because she was a brilliant political strategist who effortlessly turned conquerors into partners, using Egypt's immense wealth as a massive counterweight to Roman expansion.
Section 5. The Final Defiance. The Verdict.
This all builds to the aftermath of 31 BC, the Battle of Actium. Octavian decisively defeats their combined fleet, Antony falls on his own sword, and she's captured, facing the very nightmare she had spent her entire life trying to avoid. So the crucial point is, were they wrong to fear her? Rome was gearing up to parade her through the streets in chains, completely strip her of her identity, and display her as this ultimate, shackled trophy of Western dominance.
But Cleopatra, ever the strategist, made her final calculated move. She chose her own exit. Using the legendary ask smuggled inside a basket of hidden figs, she orchestrated a final, brilliant stroke of defiance. She literally robbed Octavian of his ultimate triumph. He couldn't parade the living proof of Eastern conquest through his streets because she stole herself right out of his grasp.
Octavian was absolutely furious, because in the end, he had to carry a mere effigy of her through Rome, just a statue, a lifeless copy. You see, Rome built its empire on conquest, but it told its history through fear. They worked incredibly hard to bury a polymath and a political genius, trying to reduce her to nothing more than a cautionary tale. But like we said at the start, the vault doesn't forget, it only waits. So I leave you with this provocative thought. If an entire empire worked that hard to bury her simply because the real thing refused to be owned, what else is locked away in the vault? Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.